Welcome, and thank you for joining us for today's DealerOn webinar, How to Turn Mobile Site Traffic into Sales. My name is Eliana Raggio, and I'll be your moderator today. And today's webinar is being presented by DealerOn. For anyone who isn't familiar with DealerOn, we're an award-winning website development company and digital agency, best known for our amazing SEO, the best customer service, and the highest converting website designs in the industry, including the award-winning Chameleon responsive website platform. We've been awarded the Driving Sales Dealer Satisfaction Award for top-rated websites for an unprecedented 7th year in a row. We also took home the AWA Award for Best Websites 3 times. Plus, FCA and Ford announced that we're now an approved vendor. Big things are always happening over here at DealerOn. We're still the only company in the industry that offers a money-back lead guarantee program. Do you want to know more? Yeah, you do. You can check us out at our gorgeous brand new DealerOn website at DealerOn.com. And hey, if you are a Ford dealer, you only have 3 weeks left before the Ford Direct website program enrollment period expires on April 30th. So if you'd like to work with the best website vendor in the program, DealerOn, well, you only have 3 weeks. So get in touch with me or Chris Deringer after the show, and we'll help you get set up in the program. We have a great show in store for you today. We're very pleased to have DealerOn's very own Chris Deringer as our presenter today. Chris Deringer is the Chief Marketing Officer at DealerOn, and he's responsible for its marketing and operational functions. He's an expert in all aspects of online marketing, including SEO, paid search, conversion optimization, A/B analytics, and so much more. In his 17 years of digital marketing experience, he's worked for one of the largest website, email, and online marketing companies for small businesses in the U.S. He joined DealerOn in 2008 and has been leading the marketing department to great things ever since. He can be reached at chris@dealeron.com. Now, during the presentation, if you have any questions, please use the question feature located on the corner of your screen to submit them. At the end of the presentation, we'll answer those questions of general interest. If we're unable to get to your question live, we're going to try to respond by email later today. And don't forget, a link to download a copy of this webinar recording will also be emailed to you later today for your reference. Feel free to share it with your friends and colleagues. And guess what? DealerOn has a great prize today on the webinar. One of you lucky webinar attendees is going to win a $100 Amazon gift card. Such a great prize. We could all use that, right? You have to be on the live broadcast to win it, though. So stay tuned for your chance to walk away with this awesome prize today. Also, at the conclusion of this webinar, you're going to get a short survey. So fill it out. We're always looking for quality feedback from our audience, and we want to hear what you have to say about today's show. And hey, do you tweet much? We hope you do. We'd love to see what you have to say about today's presentation, so please tag us in it. You can use hashtag DealerOnWebby, and I'm at Eliana Raggio. We look forward to seeing what you're saying. All right, everyone, let's get started. Let's learn how to turn mobile site traffic into sales. Chris Deringer, so nice to have you on the show, and I'm not just saying that because you're my boss. How are you?
Hey, Eliana, I'm wonderful. I want to thank everyone who has joined us today for their time. I know how busy, dealerships get, and it's not always easy to take an hour out of your day to try and become a little more educated about how, changes in digital marketing, changes that Google is making, changes in how people are using technology, how taking advantage of those things can help your dealership sell more cars, service more vehicles, and make more money. So, like I said, I want to thank everyone for their time today. I'm going to be going through a fair amount of material. Please let Eliana know, I think through the chat functionality, about any questions that you have. When we get to the end, I'm going to try and answer all of them. I'll probably, though, just be going through my information now, and then at the end I'll try and make sure that I cover anything and everything that people, may want a little more information about. Again, I've been, working with dealers for almost a decade now, whether it's a small, one-store mom-and-pop operation to, huge mega dealer groups. So please ask me any questions that you might have. The objectives today are really to help everyone understand how to turn their website and all of their marketing into an approach that provides a mobile-first orientation. We want to go through general best practices for converting more traffic from your mobile devices into leads, sales, service appointments. We also want to figure out where our website or our digital marketing might be holding us back presently, and I'll be able to make some recommendations about things that you can do if that's the case. We're also going to talk about some things like Google and Apple Wallet coupons and geo-targeting, things that any dealer can use to generate more fixed op business as well. It's not just purely a sales, a variable ops play for mobile. So with that, I'm going to get started. You know, one of the most important changes that has occurred over the last few years is the dramatic rise in mobile usage by U.S. consumers. I'm sure that this chart doesn't come as a surprise to anyone. I think we're all aware, just through our own habits at work and at home, that we're now using our phones a lot more than we're using our computers during the course of the day. The studies have actually found that more than 60% of internet usage by U.S. consumers is now occurring on a mobile device as opposed to a computer. So it's not just that people are using their phones for calling or texting or whatever, but even the majority of internet browsing is now being done on a phone. DealerOn has seen this same sort of shift. This is a subset of our website traffic. We've actually seen a slight turn from desktop to mobile just within the last year. Again, it's a change that's taking place everywhere, and it's particularly important for car dealers. For mobile sites, speed is the absolute king. I'm going to ask everyone, if they would, to go to this URL. I think Eliana may have posted it in the chat functionality as well. But if you go to this site, and you can even Google this with test, if you just type mobile speed test, Google, think with Google into a browser, you'll be able to pretty readily pull it up and run your site through the speed test, and then in a couple slides we're going to talk about those results that you find.
Yes, audience, I did a few moments ago send it to you in the chat feature. So look in your GoToWebinar interface, look at the bottom where the chat feature is, and check out that link, copy, paste it into your browser, and do that test. It literally only takes a few seconds, all right? And we're going to ask you a poll question about it right now, if that's all right, Chris.
Absolutely, Eliana.
All right, so hopefully a bunch of you have already done this. We wanted to know what the results were like. So the poll question is on the screen now. Please, when you get a moment, let us know how your mobile site test went. So the question is, now that you've done a mobile site speed test on your dealership website, how'd you do? Please select one of the following answers. Was it great? It was less than 3 seconds, so that meant 0% loss. Was it meh, 4 or 5 seconds? I know we could do better. Ew, it took more than 6 seconds. Fail. Or OMG, I'm too embarrassed to say. We do have a few people who wrote in. Some people are saying it's still analyzing. Okay, keep with it. Some people say, oh my goodness, 10 seconds. Ouch. Other people, I'm too embarrassed for you. Oh my goodness, I can't believe it took that long. So some people are still analyzing. It's okay. We're going to keep with this because we are very curious about how this is doing. Right now, we have about half of today's audience have voted, but I'm looking for more. So we'll just stick with this for a few more seconds so we can get as many votes as possible. All right, audience? But thank you so much for doing this. And Chris, while they're doing this, why don't you just give them a few, before you get to the really important stuff, but why is this so important that they should test their mobile site speed? I mean, before you get to the really important stuff, which is, I know, on the next slide. But, I mean, why are we doing this today?
So like I was sharing on the previous slides, mobile is now, in many dealers' cases, the majority of the traffic to their website. And as we're going to see in just a slide or two, and I'd really like to go ahead and move forward. People can always return to the poll and run this. We're providing this as a resource at the end of the webinar as well, so that if people didn't have a chance, if they're not by browser, if they didn't have a chance to return their test results yet, they can come back to that. But it is critical that everyone be aware of how fast their site is loading, because we're going to see as we move forward exactly the implications of a slow loading site. So let's go ahead and close the poll and move on.
Okay, so we did that. Results are on the screen now. So a quarter of today's audience, 25%, said they did great. It was less than 3 seconds and they have no loss. That's great. 21% of today's audience said they did okay, 4 or 5 seconds. They know they can do better. The majority, however, 38%, said, ooh, it took more than 6 seconds, fail. And then another 17%, well, they're just too embarrassed to say. Now, we did have a question because somebody said it took them 9 seconds, but it was across a 3G network, not a 4 or a 5. Should that make a difference?
Yes. So Google has stated that through the year 2020, that 70% of mobile traffic across the internet will be still connecting via 3G connection. Obviously, that may, sooner than that, may become a larger percentage in the US. But Google actually offers a couple of different ways of testing your speed. And they have a test where you can actually tweak whether you're using a 3G or a 4G connection, which actually takes me to this webpagetest.org site that I'm sharing now. So this is the underlying technology that Google is using to run your site speed test. So web page test actually provides things like the load time, the first byte, the start render, all these sorts of metrics about your site, and they even present a waterfall which shows you where your site is stalling to load. This is a critical thing. Now, most dealers can't control how fast their site loads, but they can run their site through web page test, and you can even choose whether you want it to be a desktop or mobile. You can choose the browser. You can choose a connection rate as part of web page test site, and then you can download the results of that and even send it along to your web provider if you're seeing that there might be some issues. Another thing that web page test does is it lets you put in multiple sites and then video how they perform relative to each other. So as an example, here are 4 sites that we plugged in for one of our clients where we took their site and we ran it against 2 or 3 of their competitors to show how fast their site was loading versus the other sites that were going to be competing for mobile traffic. So on Google's mobile testing tool, you'll get results like this. So a really good performing site will load in 3 seconds or less. Here's an example of one. I recommend that in addition to your homepage, you also test your SRPs and your VDPs because, again, you're going to get bounces from each critical page on your website. It's not good enough to just look at the speed of your homepage. Here is actually a local Toyota dealership in our market that I put in there yesterday, and you can see that it is not typical that a site, an automotive website loads in 3 seconds or less. Sites like this with load times like this are not uncommon in automotive. In fact, sorry, here we go. In fact, somehow I skipped over this. Google actually provides a range. So any site that takes less than 3 seconds to load, according to Google, having analyzed millions of sites in all different industries, I think that the research report that I had read from them said that they have tested this on 11 million US sites where they also have analytics on the site as well. So they know what link was clicked on and how long it took the page that was clicked on to load on their side. And they measured the abandon rate specifically related to the load time of that page. So if your site takes 3 seconds or less to load, according to Google, you will have essentially no abandonment rate associated with how long it took the page to load. Now, if somebody gets there and they find that the content isn't appropriate or what they were looking for, they may abandon then. But Google, again, Google has analyzed so many sites that they're able to fairly precisely measure and quantify the impacts of different load times on the amount of abandon rate that you're going to have. So for 5 seconds, it's about 19%, 6 seconds, 24%, 7, 8 seconds. The average automotive web page, according to Google, takes 9.5 seconds to load.
Wow.
Now, this, again, it is incredibly critical that if 60% or 50% of your traffic is having this sort of problem, that you're diagnosing those situations. So if you think about the potential impact, if you're getting 3,000 visits a day and you're like a typical dealer and it's taking your site 9 seconds to load and you've got a 29% loss, you're looking at losing 870 of those visitors. The average a well-optimized mobile site at this point will generally have about a 10% conversion rate between phone calls and lead form submissions. So you're potentially looking at, 80, 90 leads that you're no longer getting. If you're converting those at 15%, you can see how many sales. You can see the amount of gross that you may be losing just because of the because of the slow load time on your mobile site. If you're doing paid search and you're spending $5,000 a month and it's taking the landing pages on your site, remember, you can hire the best digital agency in the world, but if they're sending your traffic to different mobile pages on your site that are taking 9 seconds to load and you're losing maybe 30% of that, you're essentially lighting $1,500 a month on fire because of the slow performance of the landing pages that your brilliant digital agency doesn't have any control over. So again, it's not just critical for your site's performance, but also for how you're spending your marketing dollars, that the mobile speed of your site is as fast as possible. And Google continues to emphasize this. So once we actually get the traffic to our site, we want to talk about how to best optimize our site for the traffic that's coming. So Google has been very specific over the last couple of years that while webmasters have different options for how to handle mobile, whether it's a multi-URL setup or an adaptive platform, Google has very clearly stated that they believe that responsive web design is the way to handle mobile traffic. So most providers in our industry, with a couple of very large exceptions, are now responsive. And Google has formally stated that they have seen that responsive is better for SEO, which we're going to get to in a minute. It's better for conversion. It's easier to manage. If you're creating custom landing pages on your site, you don't want to have to create one for a mobile site, one for a mobile user, a different one for a tablet user, and a different one for a desktop user. So it's not just that it's better for SEO, it's not just that it's better for conversion, but it also requires less work on a dealer or a website provider or a digital agency side to manage. So on March 26th, Google announced that they have begun using mobile-first indexing for sites that are already well optimized for mobile. If you're on a responsive platform, Google has basically stated that you're already taken care of by the nature of your being on a responsive site. What this means is that now Google is first crawling the mobile version of your site via their Google mobile search bot, as opposed to crawling your desktop site and then using that for the indexing. So This has been in the works for Google for more than a year and a half. And Google has also made these recommendations specifically when they rolled out this announcement March 26th. So you want to be sure that your structured data, if you're not a responsive platform, is on all versions of your pages. You want to make sure that the metadata is on all the versions of your pages, that the mobile and desktop content is perfectly mirrored between the two so that you're not missing out on any content because it's not on the mobile version of your site. So I think this brings us to our next poll question, Eliana, which I think specifically talks about how people are focusing their digital advertising dollars.
I think that's a great idea. All right, Chris. Audience, second and final poll question is on the screen now. We'd love it if you take part in our poll question and let us know what % of your current digital advertising budget is actually spent on mobile. Please select one of the following answers. Do you believe it's over 70%? Is it somewhere between 70 and 50%? Somewhere between 50 and 30%? Is it less than 30%? Or maybe you don't know, or you're not really sure that you spend anything on mobile. Once we get a majority of the votes in, we're going to close this poll and share the results. And I love that we already got some great questions in from the audience. So audience, I'm not kidding with you on this one. This is a phenomenal presenter, and he's got some wonderful answers for you. So if you want help on how to turn your mobile site traffic into sales, and specifically about something that's happening at your dealership, Chris is the guy to ask, so get those questions in. We're looking forward to a really nice Q&A session after his presentation. So please, don't be shy. Get those questions in. All right, audience, thank you so much. You've been so great with our poll questions today. I'm going to close this poll, and Chris, let's share these results with everyone. All right, so the question was, what % of your current digital advertising budget is actually spent on mobile? Only 5% of today's audience say that they're spending over 70%. Wow. The majority, however, 36% of today's audience say they're spending between 50 and 70%. That's very impressive. 27% of today's audience say it's between 50 and 30%. 9% of today's audience say it's less than 30%, and nearly a quarter of today's audience, 23%, say they either don't know or they're not really sure that they spend anything on mobile out of their current digital advertising budget. Chris, is there a right answer to this? I mean, is this the results you were thinking about?
Yeah, so I can give you a ballpark answer based on how I see our top performing dealers who are doing digital advertising, how they're spending. And I can also tell you that at this point in 2018, almost 70% of local searches, which are essentially the ones that dealers are in the market for, most of that traffic is coming from mobile devices. We see that our top performing dealers basically mirror that, if not even slightly more weighted to mobile than 67%, because what I have seen, the data that I have most recently seen has shown that the ROI for a dealer that's spending about 70% is a little bit higher on mobile than it is on the desktop traffic that they're driving to their site. So if you were simply going to spend based on how the traffic, the weight of the traffic is, you'd be at about 67% on mobile right now. But like I was saying, I've seen based on the cost of that traffic and the return that dealers get on that traffic, that you should probably be even slightly more weighted to mobile. Now, obviously, it depends on your market, it depends on your website, it depends on your agency, how they're set up, but dealers at this point should be spending way more than 50% on their mobile advertising. So one of the reasons that I encourage dealers to spend so aggressively on mobile is the changes that Google has made to their mobile search results. So this is one of our clients, and this is looking in their Search Console data. And I suggest that if anyone on the call is not familiar with their Search Console login, isn't confident that their agency or their provider is actually using their Search Console information to make decisions, that that be one of your to-do items for the next 30 to 60 days. There is an incredible wealth of information in Search Console that can inform your digital marketing and your website decision making. So this is one of our clients' data, and the first row here shows exactly how many searches have been done on desktop and mobile for this dealer's name over the last 30 days. The second row is a slight variation of the dealer's name. The third row is the dealership name plus the word service. The fourth is another version of their name. What you're going to see here is that even people on a mobile phone who are putting the dealer's name in, only 27% of them end up clicking through to the dealer's site, even though they are essentially first every single time on a mobile device for those terms. The reason that that is happening is because when you type in a dealer's name, there are going to be 3 or 4 ads, and if you're not spending on your own name, they aren't going to be your ads that are going to appear before your organic listing. So even if you're number one, and you should be, every time someone searches for your name, you're number one organically. If you're not spending money, someone else is getting, in some cases, 70-75% of your traffic because you're not spending the money. You're just assuming that you're going to get that mobile traffic to your site. So the latest numbers that I've seen from NADA have shown that a dealer typically spends between $600 and $700 in advertising per vehicle that they're selling. So if you've spent on average $600 to get a consumer to go on their phone, go type in your name to figure out how they're going to get to your dealership, and then because you decided not to spend an additional 50 cents to get someone to click on your ad when they Googled your name on their mobile phone, and instead one of your providers actually gets them to call their dealership because the consumer wasn't paying careful enough attention, you have spent $600 getting them right to your virtual doorstep, right to your digital doorstep, and then your competitor has swooped in and taken them over to their showroom. So it's critical that you're spending, even on your own brand, on mobile. One of the things that we're seeing is as consumers get more used to mobile, they are converting at a higher and higher rate. So consumers actually will fill out forms on a well-optimized dealership website. They will call more frequently, but if you have well-optimized mobile forms, they will fill those out online. So we're almost seeing that our top performing dealers are generating as many mobile leads when you combine form leads and phone calls as desktop. So again, it's incredibly critical that you be looking at a mobile first website experience for your customers. When you're analyzing your site, when you're doing review calls with your agency or your website provider, when you're setting up your Google Analytics or any of your reporting for your dealership, you are going to have slightly different metrics for mobile versus for desktop. So for a desktop, obviously form leads are critical, phone calls, service appointments. For the mobile version of your site, you're going to have click to call, but you're also perhaps almost as critical as calls coming directly off of your mobile site are people clicking on the directions and going straight, hopefully, going straight into Google Maps or whatever map app they have on their phone so that they can get directly to your dealership as quickly as possible. After that, you're going to have like form leads, and if you're giving them an opportunity to save coupons directly to their wallet, you want to be measuring those things too. The secondary metrics for desktop and mobile experiences are also important as well. But if you're not measuring these things as you make changes to your marketing and to your website, you're overlooking the most impactful metrics on your dealership that you're changing as you make changes to your website and your marketing. So if you're doing A/B testing, you want to also make sure that you're splitting the results that you're measuring between desktop and mobile. So even if you're on a responsive platform, changes that you're making to that one HTML code base may have different impacts on the desktop experience versus the mobile experience. In fact, you may be improving one experience for a set of consumers while degrading the experience for the other. So as you're doing A/B tests, you want to make sure that you know the results for both individual groups because they can convert differently. And in fact, if you're seeing that one version of the page is better for mobile and the first one is better for desktop, you may want to figure out how you can take the best of both worlds in the future versions of those pages. So it's an additional way of increasing conversion by making sure that as you're testing your site, you're understanding how the pages are performing for both groups of customers. One of the challenges that dealers have, you're seeing more and more that dealers are starting to move their clients, or providers are giving their clients, their dealer clients, options to begin using like free-form search on their websites. And we in fact are testing some versions of that on our on a couple of sites ourselves. But one of the things to remember is, you know, Google and Amazon, which people are always looking to for best practices, they have billions and millions of potential pages to show, of potential results to show. For a dealer, even huge dealer groups or dealers are going to have, you know, 700, 800, maybe 1,000 vehicles, maybe 8 to 10 models. If it's GM, you know, potentially quite a bit more. But it's going to be a very finite, limited set. And ultimately, on all of these sites, they're eventually just going to put you into a class of product that you're looking for, and then they're going to go down through the search. So what we recommend to our clients, especially on mobile, is that they use something more like this. And we have still seen that we haven't found a free-form search on a mobile device that can outperform just having your inventory listed in a widget like this. And again, we're still testing this. We're running a couple of tests on some Ford dealers in the Southeast. But to date, we have not seen anything that outperforms this stacked widget functionality on a mobile device. You want to make sure that you're optimizing your experience, not only for your homepage, but for the SRP and the VDP of your page. What that means is making sure that you have large buttons that are well labeled and are easy for a consumer to interact with. We have found that having both a labeled button with call and the phone number, especially having the phone number, can materially impact the number of phone calls coming from a mobile device. Having a labeled directions button can also help. Making sure that you've always got the little hamburger menu up here is also critical. One thing that can be a struggle for dealers is if they're using banners on the desktop version of their site, and then they're not paying attention to whether or not those same banners are as effective on a mobile device. You know, they may not always size appropriately unless you've got someone paying attention and providing responsive versions of your banners. It's going to be harder for a consumer to move through some of these because some of the swiping side to side on mobile may not be so visually apparent. Here's an example of a banner that, you know, we had created in the past where we didn't well optimize it on our first round for a mobile device, and you can see how it's kind of shrunk in here. You want to make sure that you're optimizing all your banners for each version of your site with particular focus on how it performs for mobile, because we know that about half of our traffic is going to be for mobile. And if you're spending 70% of your ad spend on mobile and you're driving a material percentage of that to the home page, and then the first thing that they get to is a screwed up banner, again, you're just wasting your advertising dollars. So here are a few examples of some mobile landing pages that people have either created on our site or had one of their agencies create on our site. And you can see some of the challenges when you're not taking a mobile first approach to designing your banners. You can see that there are no calls to action, that messaging gets cut off. You can see here that this banner doesn't go all the way across when it's resized. Again, you want to design landing pages for mobile with the mobile consumer in mind. When you're providing click-to-call actions above the quote-unquote fold on a phone so that they don't have to scroll down, swipe down on the mobile device, you're going to see a dramatic increase in the number of phone calls that you're driving. So if you're doing paid search and you're creating landing pages, or your agency is creating landing pages for those campaigns, it's critical that you know that they're optimized for mobile. Again, also make sure that if you're using chat on mobile or any other third-party conversion tool, that it's not obscuring the actual content that your consumer is trying to get to when they're coming to your page. Again, if you're running ads and you're taking them to a landing page that is completely overrun by pop-ups, you're just wasting your spend in addition to causing headaches for the consumer. One of the best practices that we've seen is to make sure that as people scroll down through your site, that they can still see at the top of your mobile site the phone number and the way to get directions to your site, to your showroom on every page, no matter where they are on the page. You want what we call a sticky nav, where the phone number, the directions, and the nav are always visible to the consumer as they scroll down through the pages on your site. Again, we have found that not assuming that the consumer knows that this is a phone number, not assuming that a consumer knows what a vehicle with a star in it means. You know, we're on automotive sites all the time. Our dealers, you know, our clients, the people on this call are on automotive websites all the time. We know what a lot of these different things mean, but consumers are perhaps on dealership websites every 5 years. They don't know what this thing necessarily means. They certainly don't know what this means. And if you've ever watched, you know, my parents are now, you know, 70. If you've watched some of them use a phone, you know, it can be surprising some of the things that you assume that consumers know that they don't. And it's never good to assume. It's always good to be as explicit as possible when you're merchandising these things. Again, the two most critical items on a dealer's website are going to be the mobile version of your site are going to be the phone number so that they can call and the directions so that they can immediately get to your site. So again, we find it's very effective to use the phone number, the actual phone number, when you're providing a way of calling, and that you not just use symbols that may seem obvious to you, but are a struggle, that are not very common across the internet.
I really don't know what the car with the little star in it is. What does that mean?
I believe it's save your vehicle. And I mean, you can debate whether saving a vehicle for a consumer is necessarily the most important thing. But certainly, if you're going to take up 20% of the nav of your mobile site, you want to make sure that every pixel of that is devoted to a call to action that a consumer is going to understand. So it may be better to have the actual phone number, which we've shown can increase phone calls by up to 30%, listed here, rather than having a vehicle with a star in it. Again, you want to make sure that when you're providing consumers with ways of calling on a mobile device, that any call to action like this is actually clickable. You want to make sure that somebody doesn't have to, that somebody on a mobile device is not presented with a please call to action, with no phone number, because that's what you're using, because you're not showing price for the desktop version. So you know on a desktop that you're going to have them click this button to call to submit a lead, and you've instead given them a please call. Well, to a consumer on mobile, this is terrible. Please call. I'm trying, but there's no visible phone number. There's no, click here for me to get in touch with your dealership. It's almost like you're teasing. Again, making sure that it is very apparent how to get to your dealership is critical for the mobile consumer. Here is an example of, and with the waterfall of ensuing pages, it's a little bit challenging to see, but this is where someone has clicked on actually getting directions, and then it brings this up, and then they click on this and it brings up this, and then they're asked to fill all of this information in. They finally do, and then they can submit. All you need, and everyone, what you should have when someone clicks on whatever the icon or whatever the verbiage is on a mobile device to get directions to your dealership, it should be clicking that and boom, you're in the Google map or the Apple map to get directions straight to your dealership. A consumer does not want to wade through 5 different pages. Who knows how long each one of these is going to take? Again, if you haven't optimized each one of these for mobile, then maybe this one's taking 9 seconds to load. Maybe this one is too. Maybe this one is. Every time you give a consumer an opportunity to bounce off your mobile site, you are essentially wasting your own money. Here, I know it sounds obvious, but you still see us. This is how every dealership should work. You give a consumer a very simple way of finding how to say, I want to get to your dealership, and then boom, here's how to get to your dealership. On a mobile device, again, it is problematic enough for conversion if you're providing consumers too many fields or unnecessary fields that you're not going to use yourself on a desktop device. On a mobile device, it is just absurd. So if you're asking them to fill out zip code on their mobile device just so that you can contact them, you're just wasting their time, and you're probably throwing away your leads. Same thing over here and over here. Also, when you're providing these different fields, you want to make sure that you're changing, and this is automated functionality within your website code. So when a consumer goes to your phone number field, you want to make sure that you're actually popping up the numeric version of the pad. You don't want every step, and this is critical for mobile, every little thing that you can think of that you can simplify for a consumer on the mobile device is the way to go. Credit app. When this may be surprising to some folks out there if they have not actually gone through their analytics and seen what percentage of their credit apps, if they actually optimize them for mobile, can come from a mobile device. I've got cases where 35 to 40% of our credit apps are being submitted on a phone.
What?
Well,
I would have never thought it was that high. Really?
That is absolutely true. And you can see that no one going through this experience on their phone is going to be submitting a lead, which is why people don't appreciate how effective a well-optimized one can be. Again, another problem. What you want to do is use, you want to use your large icons, you want to use text, you want to make it very easy to figure out how to get your financing set up, get pre-approved. You want to make it very easy. Here, step 1, click here. Here, very minimal fields. There's not going to be a zip code thing. We're going to take you through this process and take the minimum amount of information required. So in this case, the minimum amount that I'm going to require of my consumers, first name, last name, email, and phone. I might even want to test this without either email or phone. Again, it depends on your internal process, But as soon as the mobile user clicks here, I've already got a workable lead in my CRM. If they fill in additional information about getting their credit, fine, I've got even more information. But right now, I've got someone who is in market, and what we have found is that our finance leads convert just as high, if not higher, than our typical vehicle leads, because it is usually a strong indication that they are at the very end of the buying process. Coupons and structured data. So with structured data, again, and I've provided this as a resource so that people can go in and test the structured data. Structured data just as important on mobile as it is on desktop. Google and Bing have come together to tell you how to mark up the content on your VDPs, on your homepage. So you can see here, you've got reviews. This is all marked up in the structured data on the page. And then when someone does a mobile search, this is actually being provided back to them in the organic results on Google. When we rolled this out, we saw a 25 to 50% increase on direct organic traffic to VDPs. Mobile coupons. Again, listen, you can't print coupons on a mobile device. You want to make sure that even your coupons are optimized for mobile. The ideal way to do it is allow the consumer to just save them to their wallet functionality, whether it's an Apple or a Google phone. What we have seen is that mobile coupons almost never get deleted. It's less than a 1% deletion rate. The source, industry sources, or, not just automotive industry, but general internet retailing has shown that mobile coupons get a higher conversion rate than traditional coupons. So not only when someone saves this to your phone are they unlikely to delete it, but you then also have the opportunity to update that offer directly on their phone through their wallet. We also want to focus our efforts on geofencing consumers who are on our competitors' lots. The top action that a consumer in your showroom is performing is to price compare versus the other dealers in your area. Your competitors' clients are doing that themselves. They're on your site from their phones. So take the opportunity to provide them with an offer. One of the things that we provide our clients is the ability to create a specific offer, even on mobile, for anyone visiting their site from any geographic point, and customize that offer. So if you know that someone is on the mobile version of your site from one of your competitors' lots or from their showroom, you can actually modify a message targeted specifically to them. You have the same functionality if you know that there's a large, let's say there's a large university near your dealership. You can create a special offer just for university students. Take advantage of the fact that, that you know geographically where the mobile traffic is coming from to provide a contextually relevant offer for that mobile traffic. So we've gone through a lot of information, Eliana. I know I've probably gone a few minutes over.
No, you're good.
Anyway, I wanted to provide everyone with a few resources that are fantastic. They're not going to be biased in any way. Most of them, well, all of them in one way or another relate to Google. So there's the mobile speed test tool that we talked about earlier. There's the web page test. Again, this is the site that actually underlies Google's speed testing. I recommend that you all use Google Search Console, and if anybody has questions about this, we can help them figure out how to work with their agency or provider there. And then finally, Google's Automotive Guidebook, which I'm providing as a link as well. Google published this in Q4 to make sure that both car dealers and agencies had a resource that Google was going to vouch for how consumers in the automotive space are using both desktop, but particularly mobile. And then I wanted to provide everybody with some of the top action items so that, you know, you can go back to your provider, you can go back to your internet director, you can, you know, talk with your agency, make sure that you're using all of these things effectively for, you know, optimizing the mobile experience for your consumers. So with that, Eliana, I guess I've gotten through my content. So I think you were saying that you did have a few questions. I'd love to be able to help anybody out.
That's great. Okay, that was phenomenal presentation. Thank you so much, Chris. I'm going to let you take a drink of water or whatever it is you're drinking today, coffee, and let me talk to the audience for a little bit. All right, audience, I hope you loved that presentation. It had a lot of great information in it, and I can tell it did because you have already jumped in and given me some amazing questions. We're going to get to those questions in just a moment. If you haven't yet gotten in your question for Chris Deringer, CMO over here at DealerOn, very, very smart fella, as you can tell. Well, what are you waiting for? Get those questions in. We're looking forward to helping you with your turn your mobile website traffic into sales. Now, before we go any further, I do want to direct your attention over to the handouts section of the GoToWebinar interface. So look at your interface and look pretty low. You'll see a word that says handouts. Next to it, there's a triangle. Click that and it'll open up. And in there, you got one great handout in there. Guess what it is? That's right, today's slide deck. There was so much great information in there. So if you want it for yourself, that's okay. Go right into that handout section and download it. You have until the end of this broadcast to do so. However, if for any reason it's not working for you, that's okay. We also post it online with the recording, and just in case that doesn't float your boat, it's okay. Email me directly at eliana@dealeron.com and I'll get you the slide deck, all right? All right, Chris, I'm very excited about this. Audience, it's that time. If you missed it at the beginning of the webinar, well, I announced that DealerOn has a great prize today on the webinar. One of you lucky webinar attendees is going to win a $100 Amazon gift card. Oh, yes, who couldn't use that? That's a great prize. Chris, when you get a moment, if you could go to that next slide, that would be awesome. Now, audience, I need you to get ready and get to your keyboards because did we forget something there? The first person to write in the correct response to our giveaway question is going to be winning a $100 Amazon gift card. We might have forgotten to put it on the screen, but it's okay.
Sorry about that. That's my fault.
I got you covered. Here we go. Now, good luck, everyone. And I just want you to know, I asked Chris for a challenging question. He did not disappoint. This is a hard question. So I'm going to be really, really impressed with the person who gets this one right. Did he say it during the show? Yes, he did. I don't know if you wrote it down, but I hope you did. All right, audience, here we go. Good luck. It's a hard question, Chris. I hope you have a backup question just in case. Okay, here we go. Good luck, everyone. On what day, we're actually looking for the date, did Google announce they were migrating people to their mobile first index? I cannot believe you people caught it. I am so impressed. Oh my goodness. Yes, it was March 26th, 2018. David Sharp, you are the lucky man who wrote it in first. Congratulations. Sharpie, David Sharp. Congratulations, sir. I know, I'm very excited for you too. Now, Chris, if I recall correctly, we're going to be sending this by email or you need a mailing address?
Yep, just give us an email and we'll get it over to the appropriately named David Sharp.
David Sharp, congratulations. You're going to be getting that sweet, sweet prize just a few hours after this webinar concludes. Congratulations. You have gotten yourself a $100 Amazon gift card. And now, audience, I know your name isn't David Sharp. You didn't win the prize today. I know, neither did I. But you know what? We give away cool prizes every single week here on the DealerOn webinar series. So come on back to another DealerOn webinar, learn some awesome stuff, and who knows, that could be the day you win a great prize on the DealerOn webinar. Right now, we're going to congratulate David Sharp on his spectacular win. And of course, we got to thank Chris Deringer for his incredible generosity. Great prize selection, sir. All right, let's get to the next slide. And let's get started with some questions. You ready, Chris?
I'm ready, Eliana.
All right. Actually, first question does come in from today's winner, David Sharp. He says, and this was really early. He says, it amazes me that dealer.com still is pushing having a separate mobile site. And I answered to him, they do? I didn't know that. Now, his question is, Chris, when you say spend more than 50% on mobile, is that stuff that only shows up on mobile? Or what do you mean by 50% of your budget?
Sure. So when you're spending, and I'm principally talking about AdWords and spending on Google, but that's probably 90% or more of most dealers' digital marketing spend, outside of their website or whatever email marketing they're doing. I'm talking about the percentage of that spend that is targeting mobile searchers versus desktop searchers. So that slide that was showing 67% of local searches on Google right now are being done by mobile users. So I was referencing that. We actually find that if you spend even higher than 67% of your AdWords spend is targeting mobile users as opposed to desktop users, that's where we've seen our dealers have the best results.
Okay, thank you so much. And he says, and thank you for the Amazon gift card too. So, David, thank you so much. If you have a follow-up question, David, we're here for you. Let us know. All right. Next question comes from George. If I recall correctly, George is one of our friends to the north. He's in Canada. So George says, what's the best way to measure the conversion rate of your website? Is it as simple as how many unique page visitors you have divided by the amount of sales you have made that month? How would you do it, Chris?
So there are a number of different ways that you can do it, and it really depends on the data that you have access to and how much time you're willing to spend doing it. So obviously you want to measure the form submissions, the service appointments, and the phone calls that are coming in off of your website. Anything that you can directly attribute to both your website or any marketing that drove it. So for measuring your digital marketing channels, you want to make sure that for example, for phone call tracking, that you're able to track the channel for any phone call that's coming in. So a lot of people do it for paid search, but if you're also investing in SEO, or if you're investing in link building campaigns or email marketing or whatever other channels you're investing in, you want to make sure that you can track phone calls in addition to form submissions through those channels as well. So what you're ultimately looking to do, and one of the things that we do with our dealers who are really data intensive, is we will take any phone call, lead form submission, or service appointment. We'll then try and match those back to the DMS sales and service data so that we can track exactly which visitors, phone calls, etc., ended up selling a car or converting on an RO in the service department. So again, not every dealer is willing to share their DMS data. Some dealers are more interested in figuring out exactly what's performing than they are, I guess, they're more interested in that than they are anxious about what someone might do with their data. But again, to me, it is all about trying to quantify ultimately the conversion, the sales conversion, the service conversion of all that traffic in your dealership. And again, if you're measuring each one of those points, so if you're aware of how many leads, phone calls, service appointments are scheduled on your website, and then you're looking at how many of those turn into actual sales, you may identify other opportunities in your dealership. For example, if your form submissions are not converting into sales at a rate of about 15 to 20%, you may need to do some training on your BDC, or you may be getting garbage leads for some reason. So each time that you have an opportunity to tie different data sources together to give you a more robust picture of how you're measuring and how you're performing, it gives you an opportunity to optimize each part of your sales funnel.
And thank you. Great answer. And by the way, George also wrote back in and he said, by the way, we recently got rid of the rotating banner idea on our mobile. People do not have enough patience to see anything beyond the first or maybe the second banner. So I definitely agree with your viewpoint on this. Thank you very much, Chris. All right, George, thank you so much. If you have a follow-up question, we'd love to hear from you. Now, Chris, just so you know, and audience too, we only have about 6 or so questions left, and then we're going to start closing out the show. I know we're at the top of the hour, but stick with us because these questions are really, really good. All right, Chris, next question comes in from Cameron. Cameron says, hey, what are your thoughts on squeeze pages? They seem to generate a lot of leads, but do the benefits outweigh the traffic loss? Chris?
So we're actually doing a couple of squeeze page tests right now. One of the things is you have to be all in on it as a dealership if you're going to try it, because you are ultimately going to have a little bit of blowback from consumers who are just looking to get pricing on vehicles. We've also seen that one of the better ways of implementing it is to not make it vehicle specific, but to provide, so squeeze page generally, for folks who don't understand, is where a dealer is going to require the consumer to provide information before they're really going to share their pricing or their inventory. And so it's kind of squeezing that information out of them before they're going to, let them move forward with what would typically be the consumer experience on the dealer site. So one of the things that we've seen is if you require it on every vehicle, then consumers get really, they can get bent out of shape pretty quickly, and any information you get after that first one is just repetitive or garbage. Also, we've seen abandon rates can take off at that point. I have not seen dealers who have used it long term. I've seen dealers who have seen increases in leads and were excited about it, but then ultimately they decided for other reasons to return to a more traditional way of marketing their inventory. So if you're going to test it, one, I recommend that you do test it out, but also that you focus on the entire consumer experience and measure that, not just look at leads, but make sure that those leads are ending up turning into sales. So if you're increasing your leads by 25%, make sure that they're not garbage leads that aren't turning into sales, because you're definitely turning off a fair number of people who are not going to contact your dealership, but are simply going to go elsewhere. So it's very important to holistically measure those changes, and also to provide, to follow the least problematic practices when you're rolling that out.
Very interesting. Cameron, if you have a follow-up question, I'd love to hear it. Chris, just so I know, if you were in charge of a dealership website, would you use a squeeze page?
I'd probably make sure that my site was optimized fully first. I would also probably not do that at all on the mobile and on the mobile experience for anyone. I've seen it be fairly effective at increasing the leads for the desktop version and desktop consumers. But for mobile, there's no chance that I would try and do that for the mobile experience on the site. So I'd want to make sure that I was very sophisticated in the approach that I was taking, so that I wasn't negatively impacting the mobile experience.
Fair enough. I understand that. All right, Cameron, thank you so much. Great question. All right, now, for those of you who maybe were at NADA, I know Chris and I were both there. It was a great time. And I remember that while I was there, I spoke to I would say at least 6 or 8 different dealers who had this same thing happen to them. So I'm really interested to hear Tom's question. Tom wrote in, my website provider told me that my site is responsive 2.0, but another provider told me that it wasn't responsive. How can I tell? Now, Chris, like I said, this would happen at NADA. Heard it several times. So is there an easy way for somebody to tell, oh, we're doing something? Is there an easy way for somebody to tell who maybe doesn't build websites for a living? How can you tell if a website is, in fact, responsive? I see you're going live on the internet,
Sure.
even though you told me you weren't going to go live on the internet.
Well, I just want to illustrate. So if your provider is responsive, what you're going to be able to do is change, not that any consumer is ever going to do this, but it is the definitive way to figure out whether or not you've got a responsive website. So as you change the actual form factor of the browser that is viewing the site, your website should adjust accordingly, as this one is. If you're on a platform, and someone alluded to one of the platforms earlier that is not responsive, it's probably our largest competitor. If you do the same thing on one of their sites, you will find that the content just begins getting cut off. So this banner will not shrink. It will simply, you'll just see less of it. It will start just showing this portion of the banner and then this and so forth. So again, it's not that any consumer is ever going to use the desktop version of your site and then somehow come down to the mobile version and browse it. It's just a way of definitively knowing whether or not your site is responsive, or if your provider is simply using a marketing term that they've made up to sort of muddy whether or not your platform is responsive.
Thank you. That's a really interesting fact. Okay. By the way, and Cameron, thank you so much. Great question. If you have a follow-up, I'm sorry, it was Tom who asked that question. If you have a follow-up, please let me know. By the way, one of our attendees, Chad, wrote in that he uses a site called Grader.com. It's a great tool for folks who are not website savvy, but it also tells you if your website is responsive or not. Grader.com. So thank you so much, Chad, for that.
Oh, you know what? Another thing that, I hope I didn't close out of it. Another thing that people should do is you want to run your site through when you do run your site through Google's Think with Mobile Grader, it's going to also provide you, and not only, I think I talked about how web page test can show your provider like waterfall information about where your site is bogging down when it's loading. Mm-hmm. But one of the other things that your site that you can do with your site is when you stick it in the Think with Google mobile speed test, it will provide you with feedback as to how you could better optimize your site generally for the mobile experience. And I also recommend that they don't just put in the home page, put in the SRP URL and a VDP URL so that you're getting that information for all of your pages. If you know how long it takes your VDP to load, how long it takes your SRP to load, how long it takes your homepage to load, you're going to have the information for about 90% of the value of the website experience for your consumers. Now, certainly there's other value in your service pages or your About Us pages, but in terms of your vehicle sales, about 90% of the influence of your website is basically going to be in your homepage, all your SRP views, and all your VDP views.
Excellent advice. All right, thank you so much. Okay. Got some more questions that are coming in now. All right, let's get to this next question from Bruce. Bruce says, there seems to be some confusion about the SEO value of a truly responsive mobile site as opposed to a mobile-first or mobile-friendly site. What is your take on this debate? Chris? This is from Bruce.
Sure. I guess my take is that, one, I think that Google has been I think they've been fairly definitive. They certainly say that having one versus the other is not necessarily a ranking factor, but they also very clearly state that it is easier for them to search and index responsive websites versus any alternative to that. And for an example, and I encourage everyone also to look for Google's statement on March 26th, where they talk about starting to migrate everyone to the mobile first index, where they basically state, look, if you're responsive, you're already good. And in fact, Google's mobile bot crawls those sites more frequently and deeper than they do sites where it is not as easy for them to access the mobile content. And so I guess Google is not definitively stating that, hey, if they look at your site and they determine that it's adaptive versus responsive, that they are immediately downgrading the ranking for every page on your site. What they are saying is that the way that they rank sites and crawl sites, it is much more conducive for you to be using a responsive site than an adaptive or any other form of mobile optimization. And they have also been very clear that they see higher conversion for a number of different reasons. And again, it's pretty easy to Google these things and find them within Google's body of work on responsive versus any other form of handling mobile traffic. But anyway, that's, I guess, not to beat a dead horse, but I would say that my view is pretty much, I defer to Google on a lot of these sorts of things. I think they have way more data about, the internet generally, and they certainly understand their algorithm better than I do. So unless I read something that simply does not mirror what I actually see in practice from them, then I basically, take their viewpoint, and, that's what I try and pass along to other folks.
Bruce, thank you so much for the great question. If you have a follow-up, we'd love to hear back from you. All right, next question. Now, this is interesting. Adam wrote in. He wanted to know, do slideshows affect mobile site speed? Do you recommend doing away with the slideshow on mobile? Chris?
Yeah, I guess you should understand the value of anything that you're putting on your website, and whether it is helping or hurting the metrics that you ultimately care about. Most dealers who use slideshow banners or rotating banners or anything like that, most dealers do not understand how frequently their consumers actually interact with them. We provide a way for them to measure it on our sites, and what we see time and again is that there is almost no interaction after the first one, and even the mobile banner generally does not perform the way that a dealer would expect that it would in terms of engagement. Every time you're adding heavier content, graphics, multiple graphics, so that someone on a mobile device is going to have to wait for all of that content to load, you are negatively impacting the speed that your page is going to load with. So unless you know that what you're doing is adding value for a consumer, you definitely know that it's going to slow how fast your site loads down. And we know the repercussions of slow loading sites on mobile usage. So I guess that would be my high level guidance.
So your answer is no.
I mean, honestly, most consumers don't even go through more than one. Secondly, everything on the internet is about the opportunity cost of doing something. So anytime you put something front and center, you're not putting something else front and center. So if you've got some message that's like the fifth most important thing, why would you take someone away from the first four most important things? Or why would you slow the load down of the most important thing to ensure that you're loading the fifth most important thing for 0.1% of people that are ever going to get to it?
All right, Adam, I don't think he likes the slideshows. I'm just letting you know. Chris, thank you. I have no problem with anything that you just said. That was very excellent answer. So, Adam, if you need help trying to discern whether or not that slideshow is really effective on your mobile site, I'm sure that's something that we might be able to help you out with. So let us know. All right, next question. We just have a couple more questions, then we're going to close out this show. All right, Chris? Next one comes in from George again. George says, what is the benchmark for website conversion rates? If I have calculated the amount of calls and form fills that led to a sale or service, we're converting at about 14%, which sounds great. So, Chris, first of all, is George's formula for website conversion rate correct? And if so, is 14% a good one?
I would say that for every 100 users to your site, if you're getting 14 of them to either call your dealership or submit a lead form, that's probably above average for dealers. Now, all of these things depend. It depends on, if you're a Ford, a Honda, Toyota dealer, more of a middle market sort of dealership, then your conversion rate honestly is going to be higher. If you're a highline dealer, you've got a lot of people who are just coming to your website to look at cool cars and are not going to be calling or emailing, submitting a lead form. If you're doing a lot of display advertising, or if you're spending money driving traffic to your site, knowing that each individual visit that you get is less likely to convert than the average visitor to your site, but you're paying almost nothing to get that traffic to your site, then your ROI on that traffic may be great, but it may be dramatically hammering your actual conversion rate. So I would suggest that you want to make sure that you understand a metric like that for each one of the channels. Organic is always a great one to benchmark, and I would say that 14% on organic traffic is probably above average. If you're benchmarking your organic traffic, it's essentially pre-qualified. Google is only providing the traffic to your site because it's relevant, and it is fairly stable over time. So it's not like you're going to double your organic traffic from last week next week. So it gives you a good baseline for understanding your conversion rate and whether things are improving or declining for a material and yet also controllable traffic set that's coming to your site. But I would say 14% is probably above average from what I've typically seen. But again, it's all going to be very dependent upon what brand you sell, your brand name recognition, what types of marketing you're doing, all those things.
Good job, George. Keep it up. Okay, George wrote in, you've been tremendously informative and knowledgeable on this. Thanks a lot, Chris. I'll be doing much more calculating because I have tons of data to weed through. Good luck, George. We wish you the best always. Thank you, sir, for writing in. We really appreciate it. Okay, a couple more questions, Chris. This next one comes in from James. James says, what do I need to know about Google's new Mobile First Index that you mentioned earlier?
So I guess one of the things is to make sure that your provider or your agency or anyone else is aware. Ideally, and I think that I can't remember if I provided as a resource or not, but you should definitely Google it. If you get the handout from Eliana, it'll have some of the bullet points that are in there if your site isn't responsive to make sure that you're checking. Again, if your site is a multi-URL setup, and there aren't that many left in automotive, but you do want to run both versions of your site through Google's structured data testing tool to make sure that the mobile version also has all of the structured data that the desktop version of your site has. And well, the other thing is Google Search Console will alert you as your site migrates to the mobile first index. So you want to be aware of what is being communicated to your dealership, to your business through Google Search Console. Google is not, they're not going to know that your website provider probably sees 99% of the information, and you may never see it. Google is just communicating with the person charged with the website, who has created a Search Console account and whose email is associated with that account. So you want to check your Google Search Console and find out whether or not you're going to be moving into it. And then you want to see how it impacts where your search ranks in relevant searches for your dealership. And again, you can readily get that information in Search Console. So Search Console is a great resource for understanding how the mobile first index is going to impact your site.
Thank you so much. Okay, real fast. And by the way, James, thank you for the great question. Real fast, last question, and then we'll close out the show. This last one comes in from Mike. He says, what is the one thing I could do to improve my mobile website now? Is there something you can do real fast, Chris?
Sure. I'd say there are three things you can do real fast. One, make sure you're on responsive. Again, this may not be something that you have immediate control over, but it's something that will immediately benefit you as once you can make the change. Secondly, speed up your site, and that goes for the homepage, the VDPs, and the SRPs. Particularly if you run your site through and you know that you're using a bunch of third-party tools. So there are many cases where even if your web provider, and this is even true of DealerOn, if we're providing really fast loading pages, but then there are third-party plugins that have not optimized for mobile, we can do whatever we want, but if a dealer is insisting that we incorporate them in the mobile experience, we can't speed those things up but so much. We can optimize where and how they're loaded within the page, but if they take a long time to load and they need to be at a certain point on the page, there's only so much we can do. So responsive, increasing the speed, and then just making sure that every place on your mobile site, someone can readily figure out how to visit your dealership or call your dealership. No matter where they are on the page, no matter what they're doing, it is incredibly easy to just click a button and bingo, they're calling, or bingo, they have directions to get to your dealership. Those three things, which are very easy to articulate to your provider, they may not be so easy to actually turn into to an outcome, but they're easy to understand and they're easy to communicate. If you can take care of those three things, you're going to take care of 90% of the challenges that most dealers are facing for mobile consumers.
Nice. Mike, thank you. Great question. Chris, I got to say, you are a phenomenal presenter, but man, you are top notch when it comes to the Q&A session. You nailed that Q&A session. That was amazing. Chris Deringer, thank you so much. Fantastic presentation. Any last minute things you want to say to the audience before I close out the show?
Nope. I guess the only thing I'd say is if you at DealerOn, we try and be a resource. Obviously we love partnering with as many dealers as we can, but we also want to serve as a resource for the automotive market generally. So even if you're not our client, if you would like more information, or if you'd like to understand how we could help serve your dealership or provide you guidance on what you could do better, please feel free to reach out to me. My information is there. That's my cell and my email, and I like to think that I'm a fairly responsive guy. Not true in every circumstance, but for dealers, I try and be as responsive as possible.
Thank you so much, Chris. And as you can see, audience, the man's got some brains. So, if you want to pick it, then please reach out to him. He's an awfully nice guy. I know for a fact. All right, I want to remind the audience a link to download a copy of today's webinar recording is going to be emailed to you later today for your reference, and feel free to share it with some friends and colleagues. It was a really good one. Today's webinar is also going to be posted online within 24 hours. All you have to do is go to DealerOn.com/webinars to view our upcoming webinar schedule or access any of our past webinars too. Hey, this webinar is going to conclude in just another minute. And when it does, you're going to receive a short survey. Literally, it is 3 questions. It is super short. So please, we're asking you to fill it out. We're always looking for quality feedback from our audience, and we want to know what you thought of today's presentation. Chris, if you wouldn't mind going forward a slide, would be great. And if you're a Ford dealer, I just want you to know you only have 3 weeks left before the Ford Direct website program enrollment period expires. It's going to expire on April 30th. So if you want to work with the best website provider in the program, that's right, I'm talking about DealerOn, well, you only have 3 weeks to get in touch with either me or Chris after the show, and we'll help you get into the program. All right? And invitations will be going out tomorrow for our next DealerOn webinar. Ooh, it's a good one. The new rules of SEO. Today, everyone understands that showing up in search results is absolutely vital to the success of your business. However, the rules of SEO are vastly different now from even just a year ago. So if you haven't updated your search engine optimization strategies recently, you may be surprised to find out that they're ineffective, or even worse, that those old tactics that used to work are actually doing more harm than good. Have you kept up with the new rules of SEO? For this important topic, we brought you an SEO heavy hitter, DealerOn's Director of Search, Kevin Dorey. This essential 1-hour webinar is a detailed presentation where he's going to share his no-fluff, practical guide for the technologically progressive dealership. He's going to discuss SEO changes that are impacting you right now and global trends that you need to know about. He'll also go over a few old-school SEO tactics ranging from harmful but ineffective all the way to downright harmful to your dealership. Are you ready to learn the new rules of SEO? Then don't even think about missing this hour of automotive awesomeness. Register now. And don't forget, DealerOn's weekly webinars are held Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern, 11 a.m. Central, 10 a.m. Mountain, and 9 a.m. Pacific. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions regarding our webinars and our topics, feel free to connect with me directly. My name is Eliana Raggio. I would love to hear from you. You can track me down online. I'm everywhere: Facebook, Twitter, Google+, all the automotive social networks. Or you know what? You can just email me directly at eliana@dealeron.com. Thank you all so very much for spending this time with us today, and I hope to see you all on another webinar in DealerOn's continuing education series. Take care.